Chapter 3. The Way We Were. They'd met in a bar in the East Village on a Thursday night in October, 20 years back. Neither of them noticed the October thing for the first few years. When Jon finally pointed it out, Eden called it mildly interesting. Jon, being Jon, called it remarkable. This told you most of what you needed to know about both of them. He was 22. She was 21. 3 months out of Cooper Union, working in a frame shop and painting at night, carrying the restlessness of someone who'd just finished art school and wasn't yet sure what had hatched. He was 3 years into the studio, still the assistant then, not yet trusted with sessions of his own, learning the physics of sound with the thoroughness of a man who buys technical manuals for pleasure. He practiced his grounding exercises even on good days. The good days were the ones that fooled you. The bar was called Muldoon's. It was gone now. East Village wood paneling and bad lighting, a jukebox that played too loud and never quite the song you wanted. Jon had gone with a colleague, another assistant named Patrick, who later moved to Los Angeles and became someone in television. Patrick had introduced himself to a group of women at the bar, and Jon had followed, not because he was the type who followed, but because the alternative was standing alone against the wall, worrying he was doing it wrong. Eden was there with 2 friends whose names he would eventually learn and eventually forget. Dark green dress, hair down, laughing at something one of her friends had said when Jon arrived at the edge of the group. And the laugh, he couldn't describe it more precisely than that. It was a sound he heard with his whole body. He wouldn't have put it in those terms at 22, didn't have the language for it then. But that's what it was. A frequency he'd been calibrated to receive without knowing it existed. He said something. He couldn't remember what, even now. Something mildly observational. Something he'd thought was witty. It wasn't that funny. He knew it wasn't, even as he said it. But Eden laughed, that laugh again. And then she turned those dark, still eyes on him with her full attention and said,
"That's either the best or the worst thing I've heard all week. I'm not sure which yet."
He said.
"Which would you prefer?"
She said.
"I'll let you know."
That was it. He was on the hook from that moment. Stayed on it for 20 years. Never once regretted it for more than an hour at a stretch. They dated 8 years before they married. Not ambivalence. Their friends stopped asking about engagement around year 4, once they understood that Jon and Eden ran on their own timescale, that they weren't avoiding commitment. They were already inside something that didn't need external confirmation to be real. Completely committed to each other by year 2. The ceremony, when it finally came, was 23 people in a West Village restaurant. Eden wore a vintage dress she'd found on Bleecker and altered herself. Standard vows, neither of them was built for public performances of private feeling. The private feeling was enough. The rough patch came in year 6. Jon was 31. Eden was 30. The anxiety he'd been managing alone since his late teens had become unmanageable, and he hadn't sought help because seeking help felt like a confession, and he was, beneath the gentle surface, as proud as any man who's successfully hidden something for 14 years. The dark thoughts had been coming more frequently, more vividly, and the management was costing more than he had. The deficit was starting to show. It showed in silences. Evenings where he was physically present but not really there. A dulling of the warmth that was the most recognizable thing about him. Eden saw it first. Of course she did. She'd trained herself to see what was truly there, not what she wanted to see. She asked gently, more than once. He deflected, gently, more than once. Then one night in December, the old apartment on 9th Street, smaller place, she said very softly, that she couldn't stay in a relationship where she was an observer of something she wasn't allowed to understand. Not a threat. Eden didn't threaten. She stated a fact. She was on the outside of something happening to him. And the outside wasn't a place she could live. Not an ultimatum. An honest accounting of what she needed. What she needed was access. He told her everything. He'd never told anyone everything before. Not his mother, not Patrick. He sat on the floor of their small living room. He was always more honest on the floor. Something about ground level made lying feel like too much effort. And he told Eden about the thoughts, the dark ones, the ones that arrived without invitation, and described acts he would never commit, never want to commit, but that his brain generated with a fidelity that was indistinguishable from intent. The thought of pushing someone in front of a car, the thought of saying the most devastating possible thing to the person he loved most, and the worst one, the one he'd never come close to naming aloud, what it would mean to hurt her. He said that out loud. The worst thing. The thing he'd cataloged and labeled and quarantined with every tool he'd ever built. Because if he was going to do this honesty she was asking for, he needed to do it without editing. No curated version. No partial accounting. Eden sat still while he talked. Didn't interrupt. Didn't flinch. When he finished, she was quiet for long enough that he had time to build the full architecture of regret, how to take it back, what to say, which version of the apology might salvage this. He was already rehearsing it when she reached across the floor and took his hand. She said,
"Those thoughts are not you. They're the noise. You are the man who waits for the noise to pass."
He pressed his face into his palms. He didn't cry easily, had a physical resistance to it, something he'd always considered a failure of character, something he'd never been able to fix. But something in what she'd said, the accuracy of it, the precision, broke something loose in him. He shook once, and she moved across the floor and put her arms around him and held on until it stopped. He found Dr. Annan the following week. The months after the disclosure were, paradoxically, harder in new ways. Not because Eden had received it badly, because the receiving had changed the arrangement between them, made it more honest than either of them had planned on. And honest arrangements require adjustment. They fought more. They were better. The fighting and the better were the same thing. By year 7, they'd arrived through the slow, exhausting process of two people deciding to know each other completely, at something Jon would spend the rest of his life unable to properly name. Not the beginning, not the romantic surge of year 1, not the comfortable settling of couples who've just endured, something harder than either. A love that had looked at its own worst-case scenario and chosen itself anyway. Eden said it once, the best version.
"I fell in love with you in a bar, and I chose to stay in love with you every day afterward."
Not a complaint, not a warning, a point of pride. The most accurate definition of love Jon had ever encountered. Not a thing that happens to you. A thing you do every day with clear eyes and full information. He tried to deserve it. He made her coffee first every morning. He bought flowers for no occasion. He held doors and over-apologized and worried and was gentle and carried 20 years of her in his hands with the care of a man who understands that what he's been given is irreplaceable and that he needs to hold it like it knows it. He also carried the thoughts, the dark ones, the managed, quarantined, named and noted thoughts that had been part of him since he was 17, that he fully expected to carry to his grave as part of the deal his neurology had made with the world. He had not expected the deal to be renegotiated.